Today on the Batt Signal, students are struggling to get their textbooks from the Texas A&M bookstore before assignments are due. Managing editor Kyle McClanagan provides an update on students attempting to overturn the decision to not include the Memorial Student Center as an early voting location. And the Buch School celebrates its 25th anniversary to commemorate former President George H.W. Bush. And fellow listeners, welcome to another episode of the Batt Signal, recording from KA&M. I'm Kenzie Finch, this week's host, and today we're going to take a look at some of these topics. The A&M bookstore, located in the Memorial Student Center, or more commonly known as, by the students, the MSC, is a common source for students to order textbooks from. The bookstore provides a seemingly easy way for ordering books by allowing students to look up a class and order the required reading without having to go to each individual syllabus. However, according to the article written by one of our reporters, Jamie Whitley, some students have been struggling to get their books in a timely manner before their first assignments are due. Books have been placed on backorder, which has left some students to stress about the approaching assignments. Engineering sophomore Gabe Ross had this to say about it, quote, "Actually getting the textbook is the most difficult part of ordering books through the school bookstore." Business freshman Selena Sakura gave a similar response, saying that the textbook for her Fundamentals of Information Systems class wasn't available at the bookstore, despite ordering it a couple days early. Sakura also said the bookstore informed her of the back order, but didn't tell her an exact time to expect the book to be in by. Ross said that he does not agree with the idea that he has to wait 2 weeks to get a book in, but the assignment based on the reading is due in 3 weeks. This lack of available textbooks and lack of communication are leading some students to look elsewhere to purchase their reading material. At the time of recording, the A&M bookstore has not been available to comment on these concerns. Next up, I have the battalion's managing editor, Kyle McClanagan, here with me to update us about the MSC not being selected for an early voting location this year and how students have responded, as well as how A&M's responded. Kyle, first off, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can you go ahead and give us the rundown of recent events surrounding this issue? What has happened so far?
Yeah, so in Brazos County, the Brazos County Commissioner's Court is what decides early voting locations. And so for the past, I don't know the exact date, but at least since 2016, the MSC, or Memorial Student Center, has always been an early voting location for the 2 weeks of early voting, no matter if it's a general election or a midterm election. Or on July 5th, the Commissioner's Court voted to approve the early voting locations, and it was approved in a 4-1 vote, except the MSC was missing from the list of early voting locations. Since then, students have, of course, not been happy with that. Last week, a lot of them went and spoke to show their disapproval to the Commissioner's Court.
How do you believe this is affecting students?
Yeah, so I spoke to someone from Aggie Democrats, and she had said that this is definitely going to reduce voter turnout, because a lot of the ways students remember it's time to vote or that an election is happening is because they'll see the vote here signs up in the MSC for the 2 weeks before early voting. And then some of the other students I talked to said it's unrealistic for the county to think that students can just walk to another voting location or drive there when many students don't have cars. I know I said I had spoken to someone from Aggie Democrats, but this is also a bipartisan issue. Before the Commissioner's Court voted on it, the Democratic county chair and the Republican county chair for Brazos County were both at the Commissioner's Court and both said that the MSC should be an early voting location, but the Commissioner's Court still decided to not include it.
How has A&M responded to this?
Yeah, so the university administration, or like A&M as a whole, hasn't responded, but I did speak to Transportation Services, and they did say that one of the, or the closest early voting location is on bus route 12, but there is no official stop there. So it would only get students close to it, not directly to it. And they said that they didn't have any plans as of now to include a stop at the city hall, which is where the early voting location has been moved. They said if an organization did want to sponsor a bus for early voting, it could, but it would be around over $100 per hour per bus. And so I did some math, and that would be like almost $30,000 if an organization wanted to sponsor the 2 weeks for that. So yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, just I hadn't made it clear earlier, but the location has been moved to the College Station City Hall, which is where early voting is going to be, and the MSC will still be open on Election Day. Although Trudy Hancock, the election administrator for Brazos County, did point out at one of the previous Commissioner Court meetings that on Election Day, or on the last Election Day, the lines were very long and they had to stay open almost an hour or two more than they had planned.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your insights into the story.
Yeah, thank you.
The last topic of today's podcast was written by one of our reporters, Amanda Hare, regarding the 25th anniversary of the Buch School of Government and Public Service. The Buch School is hosting events that started on Tuesday and will continue until Saturday the 10th. The events are being held to honor late former President George H.W. Bush and include speakers who knew George, a private ride-home ceremony, and a watch party for the 41 on 41 documentary. Head of the Public Service Administration Department, Lori Taylor, said that the goal of these events is to celebrate the fact that the Buch School has been going strong for 25 years and helping students engage with the broader policy and public management community. The Buch School opened in 1997 as part of the George Bush Presidential Library Complex, and recently opened a location in Washington, D.C. in January, where they held a 25th anniversary celebration in April, featuring appearances from Bush's son, Jeb Bush, and House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Marketing and Communications Director for the Buch School, Robin Small, said that George was looking for a place for his presidential library and that choosing a public state university was kind of unusual. George and his wife Barbara used to visit campus and sit in on classes. Small said, "You're sitting there, taking notes, and suddenly the president walks in. People who weren't connected to him and who remember those stories are just sort of blown away." Barbara Bush died in April of 2018, and Bush died in November of 2018. Both of them are buried on campus at the Bush Library. All events except for the ride home ceremony are open to all students and streaming on Facebook Live. This week's contributors are Jamie Whitley, Kyle McClanagan, and Amanda Hare. Be sure to tune in for next week's podcast and all future podcasts to stay up to date with relevant local news. Thanks, and gig 'em.